Tobias Konerman lives in Berlin. He is a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist. He specializes in working with developmental trauma and is also one of the teaching assistants on the NARM trainings in Europe. Tobias has worked for over 10 years in close collaboration with Thomas and is also one of the trainers of the Academy of Inner Science. He has developed models for process-oriented change and offers advanced trainings for psychotherapists and coaches, especially in the German sphere. Yeah, and he's a close friend of the Pocket Project team, and we're really happy to have you here tonight, Tobias. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kasia, first of all, for inviting me and for your nice introduction. I'm happy to be here as a guest, I must say, and also to spend the time we have together in this evening in these community calls. And for me personally, what's the most, I guess, joy of sharing with you what I want to share tonight is I'm really a big fan of, let's say, informed compassion. So I know that it's already a huge contribution if there are people who are willing to be open and warm and come from a place of wanting to give others the credit of seeing each other in our humanity, and to have a general sense of empathy and openness towards us or us fellow human beings. But for me, like I always see and feel when we understand, and the understanding opens our heart, that's very powerful. So when we see somebody and we connect because we see and we understand. And of course, I don't mean so much understand cognitively, but we see where somebody is coming from internally. And when we see where someone is coming from internally, almost naturally, there is connection, or at least an understanding that enables connection. And I will talk about, of course, let's say a model, but for me, it's a very alive model. And this talking or teaching about a model of understanding has only a value when it enriches our relational life. So either for you professionally in working with clients, but really not so much only as a professional model, but as something that hopefully is applicable to meetings on the street, supermarket, intimate relationships, your work life. Because the beauty about the mystical principles is that if there are mystical principles, they need to work everywhere. So, of course, I'm looking through the clinician lens, but it's really not about psychotherapy or clinical applications. It's about a life and how relationships and development is shaped. And so I do hope that this will be a mutual relational journey tonight. And I will give opportunity for you to really let what's been talked about sink in for you, and maybe do a little exercise also in the course of the call. But I would like for now just to take a moment for us to land here a bit and to kind of synchronize. And for the start of that, I would like to invite you to choose someone here. You look at the tiles, you see a lot of faces, and just see whether there's a face that you kind of like to look at. For whatever reason, you see a face and you say, oh, I can rest there for a bit. And then you just let yourself be with that person for a moment, not so much to find something out about that other person, but more to give your focus, your attention a moment to rest. And if that's uncomfortable for you for whatever reason, you don't do it, you can also, be with yourself or close your eyes. But if it's comfortable to look at someone, then see how it's like to land here in the call with however you feel tonight. While also connecting to somebody else who you probably share a deeper motivation and interest with, just simply because that person is here. And if that feels all right with you, you can also choose another face that seems for some reason appealing to you, or you can look at and let yourself land with that person for a moment. Or you're just with yourself and take a moment. And from there, give yourself a moment to arrive with your awareness fully with and in yourself. You can do that with open eyes, you can do it with closed eyes. But now it's really a moment for you to settle in here in your sitting. If it's comfortable for you, connect to your breath. Really good about the breath is that it's just really happening here and now. There's no past, future in the breath. When you're connected to the breath, you can be pretty sure you're here right now. And also to how you're sitting. There's something that holds and sustains your sitting. It's a chair, and the chair is on the floor. So there's something that supports your sitting. And under that floor, there's even another floor. And under the floor of your house, there is the earth that supports the house. And just to, invite that into your awareness for a moment. And wherever you are in the world right now, from where you dial in, you can be sure that that earth is a shared being. Everybody who's dialing today is sitting on and connected with. And it's the ecosystem that sustains you and sustains us. So it's really what you're embedded in. And from that really large ecosystem, you can come to the next smaller ecosystem, your body, that amazing complexity that sustains your whole life, yet the body you're sitting in right now. There's so many functions in place of your body in this moment that allow you to sit here and to have some attention, just to be in a state to be able to participate here tonight. And if there's also a relation with your body that has difficulties or is challenging, then for a moment really invite what's working, what's available for you. And you can be sure that that surpasses everything that's not working by far. Or that seems not to be working. And so, if you want to, just in your pace and rhythm, you can expand a bit to that kind of group body that's sitting here, this community call. You can do that with closed eyes, with open eyes, but just to sense there are many bodies, but there's also one big body sitting here. And to bring your awareness also back to this shared field and the other people on the screen. If you want to, and really only if you want to, feel free to write 1 or 2 words in the chat of how are you right now participating here? What's the state you are? Whatever it is, I invite, only if it feels comfortable, to see what's present right now for you. And also see when you read these comments how it affects you. To read what a variance of states. Just how different people can feel. Okay, thank you for sharing, everybody. And as always, I invite you to keep one window open for your inner states tonight. It's like on a computer screen, there's a browser and you have some windows open, and one window can be open for how you are. Because maybe, you feel affected by something, or you feel, oh, I'm starting to effort to follow the content, and just to be aware of that. So I would like to introduce from here a bit what I would like to bring today. And really my motivation is that my hope is that three things can become clearer tonight. The first thing is maybe a bit of a more of a realization how much we need each other and depend on each other. That really no developmental process can do anything alone. Not as a 4-year-old, not as a 30-year-old, not as a 60-year-old. And the second thing is that I hope it can get a little bit more clear that we really don't share the same privileges. And what I mean by privilege, beyond the obvious outer privileges of where we are born, all these, all these things, I'm talking about the privilege of inner capacities. So when you can sleep when you want to sleep, or when you can open to somebody who you love and you can open your heart, these are all inner capacities. And when you have that capacity, it's a privilege. And not everybody has these same inner capacities, because some levels of our development are blossoming, and some still need time or support. And when in these capacities, they are not fully available to us. And we are very different who has which capacity where. And the third thing that kind of comes from that is hopefully there can be a bit more of compassion for all the areas in us, in our fellow human beings, where we are not free in our actions, choices, and feelings. Because we are not, when there are difficult points where our development has been compromised, we are not free in our feelings, and we can see where there's freedom or creative action, we build around that, but we really cannot choose how we feel there or how we are affected there. And for me, that's really the core of what it means, trauma-informed work, independent of the field of application. For me, trauma-informed work has a lot to do with acknowledging that we are not equally free in ourselves in terms of our inner capacities for inner choices, feelings. Sometimes we make inner choices that feel more like a reflex, not like a response. And then when it's a reflex, it's difficult to take responsibility, because we don't even know how we are involved in our own feelings here, especially in those parts where we feel most challenged. And I think this model, what I want to introduce, it really helps. And of course, Thomas has developed this, like everything he has developed, really from the inside out. But when you look deeper into the model, of course, you find many, many, many parallels to great thinkers, healers, therapists who have had similar thoughts around these things, right? So I want to start with just a broad idea of what these developmental principles are about. There's a really nice quote from Robert Keegan, a developmental psychologist I really like, and he said, really the whole process of development is really about, we differentiate from life in order to relate to it more. There's so much in this sentence, right? Because we kind of separate, individuate, but not in order to be more compartmentalized people, everybody who is his own individuum, but individuation or differentiation from symbiosis is really about the ability to be more in relation. So there's a process of differentiation and integration. Differentiation is to move out on our own, and the integration is the possibility to be able to come back. And this will now not look really beautiful, but I do it nevertheless. There's this pen here I can use. So I just want to give you an idea, you know, from this is now really kind of attachment theory, developmental psychology in a nutshell, where you feel like when this is kind of the starting point here, right, where we feel as very small beings, like being connected to our caregivers, what children really do is they move away in order to, you know, be excited and then scared, and then they need to move back, like very quickly to feel safe again, right? So there's this curiosity that comes from relaxation. And then at a point where I reach the limits of my capacity as a child, I come back to the source of safety. In the ideal case. And when there is a regulation happening, I can move out a bit further, only to meet another, you know, layer of my limits of capacity. And then, of course, I move back to feel safety again. And if that is happening, and if that's first of all allowed to happen, and if there's the capacity of the caregivers to hold that process and to stay open in a regulated nervous system, which of course none of us has experienced in the full extent or in all levels, then there's really a growing confidence about me being in the world that comes from the inside out. So whenever there's this talk about how can I, you know, become a more confident person, it's really not about assertiveness training or positive affirmations, but really more about confidence. This is really this process of being respected in where am I in my capacity, and can I be exactly there? And when I need support, can I receive it? And when I want to do it on my own, can I do it on my own? And then, you know, when that kind of trust happens, then there's this movement going all the way here. And then there's this magic moment where, you know, the child doesn't want to come back and is actually taking joy of, I can do it on my own. I don't need you to regulate me. I will just stay here. I don't come back. And then there's kind of a joyful moment. And that's the you know, the beginning of the dawn of the ability to say no. There's enough capacity in me that I don't feel dependent anymore. And that comes with a feeling of joy and sometimes pride. Right? I can do this on my own. Because this whole field here, it feels dependent and it also is dependent. There's a natural dependency. I am co-regulated by whoever is taking care of me. But here, there's really autonomy and this ability to say, I'll do it on my own. I can do it here. So here, somehow, I have to say yes. And here, I'm clearly saying no. And so what we have here is what Thomas calls 1D, 2D. 1D means there is a developmental impulse that doesn't even know yet it exists, right? It has no self-awareness. Only in 2D. And if there are any physicists in the audience, please bear with me, because whenever I talk to physicists, they say, this doesn't make sense to call it dimensions. So, but it is a great metaphor, okay? So there's this 1D, kind of a latent capacity that develops into a 2D. And 2D really means I'm starting to be able to do it, but I cannot sustain it yet on my own. I still need to rely a bit on support. And then when there's 3D, you know, what I was able to symbolize and to see how the grown-ups do it, or, you know, or big brothers, sisters, and I want to do myself on 3D, it has landed. I can do it. In most of the times, really settled and integrated, that's in this model being called 4D. And to give you a little bit of a more, let's say, very different metaphor, I like the metaphor of, I have been a sort of passionate dancer. I learned salsa when I was studying. And then you can really see how the development of any motor skill, piano, dancing, martial arts, whatever it is, goes through these loops, of course, as well. So the 1D state means you have never heard about this possibility, that there is such thing like this dance, right? So it's a question you don't ask yourself. And on 2D, you go to your first lesson and you pick up, you know, on it how it works, and you're so very busy with doing it correctly, and you know. And on 3D, you feel kind of you mastered it a bit, you know, you're very proud of what you can do. And that's usually the phase where whomever you dance with, it can get very uncomfortable because you feel somebody's just turning you and being proud how much you can, you know, what kind of figures you were able to do as the one who's leading the dance. But there's not yet this fine-tuned relational capacity, which you only get in 4D when it's integrated. So in a 4D state, let's say your working memory, you do not need a conscious attention for what you're doing, but it's already so much established in your body that you can start to play with it. And then that's usually the phase where it's being more connected again, and you can use what you have learned in the dance to be in relation. And to give you another example, let's say you want to develop the capacity to, you know, to set boundaries, to say no. In 1D, you probably just feel stressed and disturbed when being too much around people, but you don't know why. You may feel that you're withdrawing more and more, but you don't know why you don't like to be in a special work environment or around certain people. You feel the symptoms, but you don't know why. But maybe then you see somebody, or you work on yourself, or whatever, maybe do some inquiry or therapy, and then you start to see in 2D, this is actually, wow, I actually don't say no. And you know that this is the case, but you still somehow, you can observe yourself how you don't say no, but you still cannot say no. You know, like, this is a moment where I would need to say it, but for some reason I can't. And on 3D, you're actually doing it, you know, you say it, and you may be proud of, wow, I can say no. In most of the situations, maybe sometimes with certain authorities, I still can't. And then on 4D, it's really not a question anymore. You don't even think about it anymore. It's so natural to say no. And for some of you listening right now, that is natural. You say, of course it's allowed to say no. And for some of us being here is absolutely not natural. 4D means, of course. How can it be different? And the reason why I find this model important is when we really want to care about relationships, it's so helpful to see where somebody is. And sometimes we think what's natural for us is so absolutely not natural for others. Just a personal sharing, I remember so clearly such a good learning experience with a very good friend of mine. We had an argument and I was getting angry and loud. And she was just getting very silent and mute. And I got more angry and more angry. And then I said to her, a very good friend of mine, like, yeah, but if you're irritated, you can also get angry at me. So we're both angry, just get angry at me. And then she said, I can't. I would like to, but somehow I can't. And then it was so good for me to see, it's actually not a free choice in her. I'm assuming the privilege of my, whatever that is, that this just applies to her as well. And there are countless of situations where we assume a capacity that's actually not really present, and it needs support. So maybe it's difficult for a person to speak his or her mind, and is the one who in group discussions or gets mute a lot. But maybe when being invited, it works. So maybe there's a capacity on 2D, it's just developing. And it needs an inviting, warm space, and then it can show up. And if I know that, and I have the capacity to see that, I can invite that. So everything in 1D and 4D is unconscious. It doesn't need our working memory. We are not busy with it. And everything in 2D and 3D is something we are really aware of. So if there's a capacity in 1D or in 4D, you're not busy with it, but for very different reasons. And I'm not talking about people here. There's this 1D person and this 4D person. I'm talking just about states of experience, of consciousness. When you're in a 4D state, things are natural. They're integrated. And in a 1D state, you don't even know what the question is. You just see symptoms of something you don't understand. So 1D is really the question we don't ask ourselves. 2D is a question we are occupied with, either as a symptom, a difficulty, something we don't know how to do that, or something we are very inspired by. 3D is the answer we are proud of. When you have a 3D experience, you want everybody to understand the same because it's so great, because you have overcome something, you've learned something. But it's only in 4D where it can be free. There's a free yes or a free no. So it's the question and the answer we don't think about anymore. So maybe some of you are familiar with how helpful it can be when you're on the path of inner development and something is really difficult for you or you are triggered, that it can be helpful of, how old do I feel? do I feel the age that's in my passport, or do I feel kind of lost or little? Or that can be super helpful just to see, that's what's going on. But the additional value of this model is when I am in a 2D state, I cannot sustain my own capacity. I need somebody to either be with me or invite me. Sometimes I can only regulate or calm myself down when there's either a cat or a plant or somebody who likes me or is at least kind or looking kindly at me, and then I can relax. And there's so much self-shaming in us when we feel we cannot do this alone. And then there is effort and pushing and trying to learn and trying to quote unquote love ourselves before we need love of others. Many self-help books say that. And then we are just putting so much pressure on a developmental phase that's not yet able to sustain itself on its own. And in that needing, of course, lies a vulnerability, but also something quite beautiful. Because we really are where we are. And where you are in 4D, you are naturally being a contribution to everyone in the room. Everything that has developed in you to 4D cannot be anything else than giving. Because 4D means it's there, I have it, you can use it if you want, I'm available with it, but I don't need to force you to like it. It can just be there or not there. I'm just here with it. And that's really where we have a lot to give without even knowing it. Because for us, it's natural. For others, not. So maybe before we do a short writing, it's helpful to be aware that when there are 1D states for people who are identified with a 1D state, with not knowing what's lacking, it's helpful to know that whatever we give them, they will not and cannot thank us for it. Because they not even know that they are receiving in that moment. A 1D state cannot say, this is my problem, can you help me? You have helped me, thank you. But a 1D state that when there's no self-awareness, you don't know what you have been helped with. It's these invisible acts of giving where you feel here's somebody really in a difficult place or is very challenged and there's a contribution. You know, whether you work with clients or whether it's just people you see in your daily life and sometimes you contribute something without that it's clear even what you're contributing to. And when I'm in 2D state, I know what I want or what I can ask for, right? And then I can start to make it a subject of, I would need help there. And sometimes in 3D, when we have discovered something, we almost, let's say, force ourselves onto others because we think what we have is so great and that everybody should use it and, and it's good for you too. And then sometimes the others are not free to receive it. But it's really in 4D where it's okay to give it and it's okay if somebody doesn't want it. And I would like to give a bit of a contemplation of 4D. Because whatever is 4D in you deserves more appreciation and acknowledgement than you are probably aware of. Because for you, it's natural. But for others, it's not. These are things that for you feel so natural, where you just feel so freely in your element. It doesn't matter whether that's in the realm of relating or being with animals or being able to experience or take in the forest or having an open ear for others, and it just feels natural. And it also speaks to the moments where people say, thank you, that was so good. And then you say, well, what for? I didn't even do anything. So I would like to invite just a few minutes of writing, whatever comes to you, when you ask yourself, what are capacities, experiences, aspects of myself that I might, tend to forget a bit how much they are there. But actually they are there, and I take them for granted because for me, they're just available to me. And to see what comes when you start writing. And another access gate can be gratefulness. To connect to what's already here for you. And of course, that also includes all the resources that your ancestors passed on to you. That maybe they were dealing with or struggling with, or things that are open flows in your intergenerational river. And I read right now in the chat, how does resilience show up? That's exactly resilience. So that's what you can rely on. And you maybe sometimes forget. And if you haven't taken on that perspective yet, really see what comes up when you ask yourself about gratefulness for what's either just here with you or what has been passed on to you. And it can be very small things. And if you want to, and again, only if you want to, feel free to write one or two aspects or words in the chat. And again, see how it affects you when you read these comments. Maybe you discover something, you say, oh, I also have that, I also have that. Or you just feel whatever you feel when you read this. Or you feel, I would like that. And I just read this comment, what if there's nothing? And when there seems to be nothing, it's really not about that there's nothing, but it's about the eyes that are looking. So it's really about adjusting the lens. Because without many, many, many layers of earth, like embodied capacities in you, you would never be able to sit here and participate in this call. And then it's maybe just smaller things that part of you expects. Okay, thank you so much for writing and sharing.